Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast, My First Season. My name is Greg. Today's guest and I have never met before, but we do share something in common. Both our first seasons were in Turks and Caicos. His was in summer of 99. Mine was 5 years earlier in summer of 94. I did hear about him, though, through a mutual acquaintance, an ex-G.O., who's living in Arizona. I was doing my last season in Israel, and she emailed me to tell me someone had written a book about their experience at Club Med. So this was around 2005 when I heard about it. So I immediately ordered it from Israel, devoured it, and my guest is here today to talk about his first season as a Scuba G.O. in Turks and Caicos in summer of 99. Everyone, please help me give a warm welcome to Mr. VJ Padre Mochel. Hey, VJ, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good. Thank you. Thanks for agreeing to come on. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. So I think you know a little bit how this goes. So you said you were a scuba instructor. So when did you get bit by the scuba bug? How old were you?
It was probably about 96, I think.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
I would say, 96 or 95.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, I was 13 or 14 and, I went to the Y. Okay. So, wow. So what brought that on? Like, what made you say, I want to become a scuba instructor?
I had gone to Turks and Club Med specifically in 95. Yeah, I'm going to say 95. And at least that's what I'm going to stick to anyhow. And
For
the
vacation?
scuba diving was, I went on vacation. And when I say by accident, I was really wanting to go down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, with a friend of mine. And our travel agent recommended this because the vacation was on sale. And it was super cheap, a lot cheaper than staying in the States, and we both had passports, so we said, let's go. And part of the package was free scuba diving, so I went, and that's where I got my first dives in, was in Turks.
They actually had free scuba diving as part of the package?
Yeah, it was airfare. I remember it vividly. Airfare, a full week. The only thing that wasn't included was bar and alcohol, and there was a scuba diving package attached to it, and it was a little over $1,000 US.
Okay, did you get fully certified, like open water 1 while you were there, or just resort dives?
No, strictly the resort dives. I didn't want to muck up my vacation by having to read books and study things and take tests and all that, so we just went and we did the resort dives. So we did 2 days worth of classes and shallow training off the beach, and then it's like 4 days out on the boat. Yeah.
All right. So your vacation ends, you go home to New Jersey, and then you decide to become a full instructor?
I decided I definitely wanted to get certified. That was
Okay.
for sure. And I thought about it and signed up for the certification classes. And I went back down to Turks, I think maybe early 97, and actually got certified down there as open water. Did my final 4 certification dives down there. And when I came back, that was when I made up the decision I wanted to become an instructor.
Where did you do your instructors?
I did it all here in New Jersey, believe it or not. Banged it all out in probably a little bit less than a year, because I remember finishing up the instructor's evaluations in New Jersey in February, the last of the dives that I needed for the class in a quarry in Pennsylvania.
God.
Breaking through the ice and
I was
water.
going to say, what's it like, diving in the crystal blue azure waters of the Caribbean and going to the East River of so you're kind of spoiled in the way you did your first dives in the ocean, whereas I did mine here in Montreal and it was horrible, 0 visibility. And I vowed never again to dive in a place until I could see my hand, so you were actually very, very lucky. You did your first dives in the ocean.
Yeah, it was. I mean, just putting on the equipment in a bathing suit and jumping in the water versus a dry suit, gloves, and a hood, all the other rigmarole. But, it was cold. It was chilly that day. It was actually warmer 50 feet down than it was at the surface by about 20 or 30 degrees. Because this quarry has a year-round temperature. When you get down to about 50 feet, it stays at about 55, 58 degrees year-round. So it was warmer down there. And when I say breaking through the ice, it wasn't like we didn't have to go out with like a hammer or a pickaxe or something. It was just a very thin layer because it was below freezing that day. But when I did finish up the first dive and came up to do a surface interval before going down to the second one, it was starting to snow. So that's the way it was, yeah.
So you got to Turks twice. So I'm trying to figure out the odds that you start applying to Club Med and you get sent to Turks for your first season. So did you apply as soon as you got your instructors? Did you apply to Club Med, or you did it just before you knew you were going to get your instructors, like started applying to Club Med?
Having been there twice and having an interest in the sport, I was paying attention to the other instructors or the instructors that were at Turks at the time. And I just had a gut feeling that not many of them had much experience, just in the way they handled themselves, the way they acted on the boat, things of that nature. So I decided to stay in New Jersey for like a year and a half, and I must have taught about 20 or 30 classes, consisting of anywhere from 3 to 6 people. Did a couple hundred dives up here in the cold water, and just to get some experience under my belt. And it wasn't until the beginning of '99 or the end of '98 that I found out the job I had at the time was going south. And when I say south, down to Mexico and up to Canada. So they were closing our operation. And I figured, well, this is going to be a good time to, start looking for a diving gig if I wanted to be able to do it. Because I was about ready to take a year or two off and just get away from the grind, have myself some fun and actually start living life. So that's what I wound up doing. I guess it was early '99. I started calling Club Med.
They actually said, "Well, you're going to Turks, right?" That was your first shot.
Well, it was a long, involved process, and it was completely out of the normal. I sent them a resume and never really heard anything back. At that time, the internet was here, but not everybody was using it, and I didn't have access to it at work. One of my coworkers did, the IT guy, but he was still fumbling through it too. I had no idea to go to the Club Med website, if there was such a thing at the time, and actually apply online. So I just started calling them and talking to recruiting. I guess it was in Miami. And so I never really filled out an application. I never went through an interview or an audition or anything. Actually, it was probably like within about 5 weeks. They just got back to me after me calling them at their request. They said, get back to us in 5 days, get back to us in 7 days. And I just kept doing that. I got back to them one day and they said, can you leave on Saturday? I said, yeah, fine. They FedExed me the tickets, and that day after I got off the phone with them, I went to my boss's office and said, and he's like, why? And I was like, well, we don't know how much longer we're going to be here, so I'm not sticking around for it. Plus, I was just offered a job in the Caribbean, so I'm going to take that. They want me to go on Saturday. He's like, oh, okay. Have fun. And that was the end of that.
Well, it's good you went there, twice on vacation, because you already knew the hours the GOs worked. You knew all the rules. You got to eat with the guests. So in a way, you didn't really need the interview process, I'd say, since you'd already been there twice. I guess you didn't have a problem with the hours at the time, though probably in '99, I think that's when the day off started, right?
Yeah, there's a funny story attached to that. I'll get to it in a minute. But okay. Yeah, I knew it was going to be long hours, but, I was doing the 9 to 5 here, and then I didn't spend a lot of time at home. I was out with my friends, during the week. So I'd be out until like midnight or 1 o'clock, hanging out in bars, not getting smashed, totally stupefied, but just socially drinking, watching ball games, or, back at that time, I think we still had quite a few, little clubs all over the place that had live music 3 or 4 nights a week. So we'd go someplace like that and just hang out. Yeah, so the hours didn't really bother me that much. I was going someplace with this and I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, you said you were going to share a funny story about, not having to do the interview because you being on vacation, you already saw how the GOs worked and what they had to do, right? Shows, crazy signs and all that.
Yeah. So I pretty much knew what was going on and I was fully prepared for it. Plus, with any job, once you're there for a while, you ins and outs. So they tell you got to do this, but there's always a way around it. So I figured there was going to be a few of those here and there. So I had no problem.
So are you much of a dancer before Club Med?
Yeah, I had no problem participating in shows. I just didn't want to.
Yeah.
When I first, no, I mean, I've done theater before, and I'm used to being up on stage in front of people. So I wouldn't say I'm 100% comfortable with that. You always get those little butterflies here and there, but none of that bothered me because I was never going to see any of these people again, and plus most of them were going to be drunk at the time while I was doing it, so who really cared? But
sorry, did you say you did theater?
Yeah, I did theater for a while. Nothing to write home about, nothing to make a living off of, just regional theater, community theater, things of that nature. Never got into music theater because I really can't sing that well, so I kind of stayed away from that. But they came up to me after I was there for about a week or so, and they asked me what shows I wanted to be in. I told them none. And they were like, what? I was like, I was told by your office that because I was scuba and because of the schedule, I didn't have to participate. Anybody that's done that type of thing before will tell you the performances are a piece of cake. It's rehearsals that will kill you. They weren't fitting rehearsals in at 10 o'clock in the morning till lunchtime or anything like that. They were always at midnight or 1 a.m.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to stay up until 3 in the morning doing some stupid dance routine when I had to be up at 7:30 to get my butt to the boat to get to work. So I just told them flat out, no. That all worked out in the end, and we'll get around to that, I guess.
So did you acquire your nickname is Padre? So did you acquire that in Turks or before?
That was in Turks. They thought I looked like, I can't remember the actor's name, but they thought I looked like Father Mochel on the MASH TV series.
Oh, okay. Okay, wow.
And, yeah, it was some stupid, meet the guests night or something that we had to do. I wound up wearing a straw hat similar to the one that actor wore on the show. And I was wearing glasses at the time, and they said, oh, you look like Father Mochel, we call you Padre. And I'm like, yeah, fine, whatever. Yeah.
All right. So you're so Scuba G.O in Turks. Can you give me your best clean, appropriate JoJo story? Everyone's got one. You must have one.
Yeah. I hadn't really seen JoJo that much or up close up until this point, and I had both 3 people, 2 Canadians, husband and wife, and a French dude from Paris that were taking the resort course. And I had them off the beach in front of the club doing the basic skills, making sure they got work the equipment. And while I was demonstrating taking my mask on, they never repeated for me. I'm looking, and when you take your mask off underwater, everything becomes incredibly blurry because the amount of pressure the water's putting on your eyes just pushes everything. It pushes your eyes out of focus. And there's something behind the woman. And she was a little nervous to begin with, going in the water and everything. And now I can't tell what this thing is behind her. So I threw my mask back on as quick as I could. And her eyes are literally filling up the inside of her mask. And her husband's sitting there, dumbfounded look on his face. And I just kind of reached out and grabbed her hand. And at that point, everybody took hands. The French guy, he was smiling past his regulator, And it was JoJo upright in the dolphin mating position. Yeah. They go vertical.
Yeah,
and he was sitting there nudging her in the butt. Yeah, JoJo was nudging her in the butt with his nose and pushing her along in the sand. And then he circled around us a couple of times, and he was content to hang out. And I took my spare regulator out, pulled her, blew some air bubbles for him, and he opened his mouth and kind of nodded his head, and then he kind of swam away to go visit another. And that was my funny JoJo. I did run into him several times after that, but it was usually when I was diving by myself off the beach. In fact, he scared the hell out of me one day. I used to just to get away from the noise, the crowd, and the bother of everything. I used to just grab a tank and dive off the beach, which it was a good way to get sunglasses, T-shirts, sometimes money, wristwatches, there's all kinds of stuff out there. And I was used to having people, from the sailing end of the beach, going out of control, sailing all over the place. So you'd see the shadow of the boat on the sand in front of you as it went over your head. And I saw this big shadow go away one time. And it's like, oh, another idiot on the boat that's out of control heading for Ocean Club, which is the next hotel down. And as it turned out, the shadow came back and it stopped over me. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I kind of like rolled over on my back thinking I was going to see a shark or something, which was kind of stupid. Sharks don't normally stop like that. But it was JoJo just sitting there, looking at me like, what the heck are you doing? And I'm there with my little catch bag filled with, sunglasses and whatever I put back. I managed to pick up that day. I would pick up some garbage here and there. If it struck me, to be so kind-hearted, but, mostly I was just in it for myself. But I've been nose to nose with him a couple of times. It's been interesting.
It's a hell of a thing seeing a wild dolphin and interacting with it.
Yeah. The other reason it kind of scared the heck out of me is because I actually did interact with the shark right off the beach one day. And that was a little scarier than, playing around with JoJo. And I thought somebody bigger had come by to, see what I was doing. But it really scared the hell out of me. Yeah.
About how long did you spend in Turks that first season? Was it just like 6 months?
I actually got there a month ahead of contract. Well, I had a 7-month contract because I was going a month early. So I did the first season with 7 months. And then I stuck around for another season after that. So it's like 13 altogether.
You probably didn't have any culture shock when you got there, right? Like, I don't know, European culture shock, since you'd already been there as a guest twice. Nothing probably phased you, right?
I had backpacks all over Europe when I was younger, so I was kind of like used to that.
Okay.
And everything. It's such an Americanized club. There's the only culture shock you have is people trying to drag you out of the dance floor, trying to involve you in activities, things like that. So I had no problem with that.
Do you have any problems working on Christmas or New Year's, or you didn't care? It's just regular days for you?
It's pretty much regular days for me. Christmas came and went. I think I spent New Year's, turn of the century. I was in scuba equipment in the pool, operating some kind of stupid water cannon they had to make a fountain in the pool while they shot off fireworks. I think it was even in the G.O newsletter. They had a picture of the pool at Turks, so you can see me, just barely see me, like 3 or 4 Scuba G.Os floating in the pool while they're shooting off fireworks in the air. So, it was just another day.
They still had that cannon, huh?
Yeah, a little piece of PVC pipe with a bunch of scuba hoses in it, a couple of tanks. Nothing fancy. Yeah. That's Club Med.
Yeah, we used that my first season. We also did that in the ocean too, that fountain.
Yeah.
Did you have time to learn any new skills there, or you were just so busy with scuba that you couldn't be bothered to learn anything else?
Never made it to circus. Never really had the ambition to. I got out to play tennis by myself a couple of times, but basically I just played against the practice ball. I didn't really feel like playing with anybody else. I think that was when we were on our 2-week break, because about, I want to say October, November 1999, they shut the place down for 2 weeks to do renovations, and they kept us all on site. So all the guests left, and 100 G.O.s had use of the property. And
you didn't have to work. You didn't have to work.
No.
Wow, that's
no guests, no work.
Never. Yeah, well, I've had no guests and had to clean up after a hurricane. So yeah, I've never had that experience. Wow, that's pretty lucky.
Well, they were doing renovations. I mean, yeah, I could do basic carpentry and some plumbing and stuff, but I wasn't going to be stupid enough to tell them that. They actually brought in contractors from off island, I think, or I would imagine. And, they hired local crews, and they came in, they redid the restaurant, they redid the bar. I think they drained the pool. They redid some of the tiling on that. Because this has been going on for some time. I mean, I think by the middle of summer, A, B, and C buildings kind of like walled off. Like, literally, they had built a fence with like plywood and 2x4s, and they were actually renovating rooms at the time. So,
did you have any hurricanes at your time?
Yeah, we did. It was, as a matter of fact, the worst one we had came through a day after we got all the guests out for our 2-week shutdown for when they were going to attack the bar and the restaurant.
Wait a minute. So the hurricane came before the renovation?
Well, they started with the guest rooms, and they decided this is taking too long. It's going too slowly. We can't piecemeal it. Plus, the property looked like crap. If you were walking down to Scuba, you were like walking through a construction zone. There were used nails and screws and stuff on the sidewalk, pieces of lumber here and there. So they got those couple of buildings done. Then they decided we're going to shut down the new major portion of the village. And I don't think D, E, and F buildings they were going to touch too much. They just basically went in there and threw in TVs and stuff. But yeah, it was like a couple of days before they were actually starting the heavy-duty renovations. And we had gotten rid of the guests on a Saturday and came through like Monday or Tuesday. Yeah, we were lucky. We didn't have anybody in the village, and there was no rush to clean things up. I think the most work I did was the preparation for it coming in, running up and down the beach one day in like 80-mile-an-hour winds, stacking up chairs and stuff and tying them together. And that was about the extent of it.
Do you have any stories or experiences you could share with us, like some funny episode? Or other than the JoJo?
We were talking about me doing shows and stuff, and I said how I just told flat out that I wasn't doing it. So maybe next season, as in like maybe he'll forget about it and never ask me again. There were a couple of, the way the chiefs of village are, right? They have that standard routine. Either a new chief comes in to take over a team, or a new team comes in to join the chief. Usually within a couple of weeks, they'll fire 1 or 2 people. You ever have that happen to you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's like standard operating procedure, I guess, so they can put their foot down. Well, the one chief of village I had my first season put his foot down too soon. The people he should have fired were actually on Scuba team. And once he got rid of the people, to put his foot down, these Scuba G.O.s, knew the routine, and they started with the shenanigans and outright destruction of property within the village, and drunken rages and things of that nature. And as a punishment, he gave the Scuba team this foam machine that they had imported from Caicos because they weren't using it up there. They stopped doing whatever they were doing. Now everybody's talking foam party, and I'm like, what the hell? I had no clue as to what's going on. And somebody explained to me, we fill this thing up with soap. The fan spins. It fills up an area with soap suds, and everybody dances in it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's get these nice tiles around here in the theater all nice and slippery wet, a bunch of barefoot people in there dancing. We're going to see some broken ankles, fractured, elbows and stuff like that. So he gives it to us, and he says, you guys better make this a good party. Otherwise, you're going to be up to your neck in you know what. I'm like, okay, so you're punishing all of us because of the actions of 2 or 3 people instead of just firing them. But you can't fire them now because it's kind of late in the season, and it's going to make him look bad. So we go and we throw this party, and everybody's trying to MC it, get the action going, and get things started. And literally all the guests are a good 30, 40 feet away from this thing, just kind of like looking at it, like, what's going on? There's nobody out. And the microphone got passed from one Scuba G.O. to the next, to the chief of Scuba, to the next, to the next, to the next. And funny how the troublemakers weren't even anywhere to be seen that day. Finally, the microphone landed in my hands. I'm like, what the heck? I can make a butt of myself, and, nobody's going to know, and nobody's going to care. At least nobody can tell me I didn't try. And that is how I wound up hosting the phone party at Turks. We started it up back in 1999. And it turned into kind of a big deal.
You became the permanent host of the phone party?
Yeah. So if I wasn't doing shows, too bad. I had my own freaking dance party, 1 hour every week, and I had to host it by myself with the help of animation and the DJ and everything, and that was that. So if they wanted me to do a show, that was definitely a show now, wasn't it? And it turned into quite a thing. Everybody seemed to really like it, and it was popular. And we didn't really get things going all that well the first time, but the next time, it just kind of sort of grew. And I just kept, doing what I was doing, repeating stuff from the week before, coming up with new material, because it was a cross between, for me, going out and talking to the guests on microphone and doing a little bit of stand-up comedy and just making stupid observations, just trying to keep everything flowing along, Whenever the bar team was there, like trying to sell shots, I'd be interacting with them, talking it up, just keeping it moving in a positive direction.
And can you give us an idea what you would say? Like what was part of the comedy part?
No, I can't because you don't want me to.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah,
we'll stick with that.
It was adult themed humor,
right.
and
Turks is still currently, I believe, 18-year and older village. So it was a different time in '99. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, even the stuff that was relatively clean was still very suggestive.
Got it.
And I was probably the only person on microphone. Think about that.
Yeah,
the
nickname of Padre too,
Yeah, 3 months into my first season, I'm on microphone hosting my own party, and I'm dropping F-bombs everywhere, and depending on the crowd, and we did get a lot of late 20, early 30-year-olds from like the New York and New Jersey area, and they were like completely comfortable with this, The one thing that never went over is the fact that my chief of village wasn't American, he wasn't Canadian. He came up to me one day and he was like, I don't understand your jokes, but as long as the guests laugh, I guess it's okay, so you can keep saying them. And he turns around and walks away. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But there was a couple of times, I guess, we gave a little full frontal nudity from some of the women.
Oh, boy.
That worked out. So you can imagine.
Did any celebrities come to your phone party, or did you meet any celebrities your time in Turks?
There's only one I can think of. His name was Donnie Edwards, and at that time he was playing for the Kansas City Chiefs, I think. He was a running back.
Oh, okay.
Big guy. Yeah, big football player. He was 6'3", 6'4", 260 pounds maybe. I actually certified him to scuba dive. He'd done all the classes on the mainland, and then he came down there with a couple of friends, and they just did their 4 dives, and I took him and his friends out and did their 4 dives and signed off on his certification. And now that I think about it, he was there the week we had to do the phone party, because I'm pretty sure I've got a picture somewhere, or it might even be up on my Facebook page, of the first phone party. And he's standing like in the middle of the crowd, and you pick him out because he is the middle of the crowd. If you know what I mean. Big.
So what your contract, I guess both contracts came to an end. Did you request a second season in another resort?
No, when my first contract came due, I asked them to stay and they let me, so I stayed in Turks. And by that time, I knew that Columbus was a couple's village. And I figured I'll wait a while before I go there. I still have some energy, even not doing the nightly shows, just doing my own thing, and my job and everything. I'm still pretty kind of run down. But I did want to stay at Turks. And so I stayed there for 2 seasons. And then we had some unfortunate incidences, and that and my lack of sleep, just being run down from the grind for so long, kind of got to me, so I left in my home.
Well, yeah, scuba, for those that don't dive, makes you extremely tired. Like, so you guys had to do a 2-tank dive in the morning, a 1-tank dive in the afternoon. And then, of course, the night dive, I guess you were still doing night dive with barbecue after?
Yeah. I mean, there were days where I did 4 dives. I did 2 in the morning, 1 afternoon dive, and then I'd take people out on the night dive. I didn't have so much of a problem with that because I knew how to space out my day and get my surface intervals in, not to exert myself. But honestly, at that point in time, there was nobody above the village level in Club Med, I think, that really knew anything about diving, other than maybe they had a certification card and had gone a few times, and they didn't realize what this kind of a schedule was doing to people. And, it was all the other stupid stuff that we had to do that was time consuming, aggravating, and, that's what led up to me wanting to go. The chief of village, I don't know whether it's club policy. He was just not thinking right. For the turn of the century, from 1999 to 2000, New Year's Eve, we had an extravaganza planned. And he was going to literally stop the party every 15 minutes so that we could do like little skits on different stages all over the main area of the village. And that didn't make any sense to me because the party started at like 8 o'clock. People were like already going to hit the bar while dinner and coming back into the dining hall. And, way before crazy signs, way before any of that stuff, the party was in full swing, I would say 9 o'clock in the evening. And I'm thinking, you're going to stop the party just to do these skits and everything? It's like, just let it roll. Everybody's having a good time. I mean, we had the main bar. We had 2 other bars set up. They put in some mood lighting, the pool stuff. And that's all we needed. I mean, we had, close to 600 people there from New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, Connecticut. These people know how to party. You don't have to show them, and the music's going, everybody's drinking, people are dancing, let it roll. And at about 9:15, the word came around the village. It's like, okay, we're just forgetting all the skits, just have the party, and that's it. That was like the smartest thing that guy did while he was there.
So you did your Y2K in Turks and Caicos, right?
Yeah.
Was anybody nervous around that time?
I don't think so. Nobody looked to me like they were nervous. I don't think anybody gave a crap, to be honest with you. Right. As a matter of fact, the morning after the party, the village looked worse than when the hurricane came through. Literally.
Can imagine.
We were all supposed to be up and in the main part of the village at like 6:30 in the morning or something to start cleaning up. And we had canceled the scuba boats and stuff for the morning. We were just going to run 2 boats out in the afternoon and just dive below the sites. So, I got up at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. I was stumbling into the middle of the village, and I'm like looking around, and there's nobody. And in a Chase lounge out by the pool, I see a pair of legs hanging off the side of it. I'm like, I'm not even going over there with that. I turn around and went back to my room. And that was it. I got up at about 11 o'clock, went and got some lunch, did my afternoon dives and stuff. That was the extent of it. But yeah, the place was definitely worse than when the hurricane came through.
Right,
but the hurricane that did come through, though, I got to admit, it wasn't that bad. It was a lot of high winds. We lost a couple of trees and some shingles off the roofs. And there was a lot of crap and debris, garbage just blowing all over the place. I came to find out a couple of weeks later that New Jersey actually got hit worse with that same hurricane than we did. It caused massive flooding in the town out by the Raritan River. And I think almost a full city block burned because gas lines ruptured and they just caught on fire. But yeah, it did a lot more damage in New Jersey than it did on Providenciales. It was funny.
Your book is entitled Sex, Surf, and Sunburn, My Life Inside Club Med. And like I said, you published that around 2005, correct? Because that's when I recall hearing about it. Am I right about that?
I'm going to say 2004. I actually got it published.
Okay, 2004.
I think it's coming up on like 16 or 17 years. So.
You wrote a follow-up book, right? What was the name of your follow-up book?
Follow-up was called After the Party. That didn't sell as well as the other one. It's not selling as well as the other one because word is out. It's kind of a somber book. It's not filled with all the funny stories and as much, sex, surf, and sunburn as the original one. So I think people are just staying away from that. They just want to have a good time and not. But I think it was either the third quarter or fourth quarter of 2020, I passed the 10,000 mark on sales.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's not breaking records. I'm not going to be
Don't worry. I'm going to put the links in your podcast description. So if anyone who hasn't read it, then please, you're going to check it out, everyone, because if you like Club Med, you'll like this book. I devoured it, and it was a great read. So, wow, I'm happy to hear that you passed 10,000. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be on the New York Times bestseller list. That's the word I was looking for. But, it's getting out there, and I'm really surprised because I haven't been advertising it, so it sells in spurts. So I guess it's like strictly, well, I would like to think it was people buying it to take on vacation and read down there. And I have gotten emails from a couple of people that actually did that, and they thought it was fantastic because they're sitting by the pool, getting a tan, reading this book, and then they're actually looking at the specific setting where the book took place. And they're just kind of like blown away by that, And it's almost like people are acting it out for them. So,
Do you have, I don't know if you dream, but do you have a recurring dream where you're still back working at Club Med? Because this happens to a lot of people. I'm just curious if...
I only had one or two dreams about being back in Club Med. One of the guys I worked with, I stayed in contact with him up until about a year or 2 years ago. We used to call each other times a year. I know that for like 7-8 years after he left Club Med, he was still having nightmares about some of the stuff that happened. And quite possibly he had a slight dose of PTSD. I don't know. Last time I talked to him, he seemed to be better, and he was having his dreams and he stuff. If anybody wants to find out what I'm talking about, buy the damn.
You heard it.
Yeah.
Buy the book. Yeah. The link will be in the description, so do not worry. I will post both of those for the ebook and softcover.
Cool.
So everyone, I want to thank you for coming on, VJ. That was very nice of you to tell your story. I really appreciate it, sir.
Not a problem. Pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, thank you. All right, everyone. We will see you all next week. Bye.